Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 241st weekly edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And for those of you watching on video, you'll see that we have a guest. Mark Phillips is with us this morning. Hello, Mark.
Good morning. Good
Morning,
morning.
Mark. Yeah,
Morning, Stan. Morning, Frank.
good morning. I have to apologise to Mark publicly because I actually moved this recording back a week. He was very flexible, I have to say, on it. Something cropped up in my life that made it difficult to do two things at once. But anyway, so thank you, Mark. Stan, how are you this morning?
I'm okay. It's a little bit early because
Yeah,
we've done this a little bit earlier,
we're
so
about 45 minutes earlier than we normally
I'm
do
still swallowing my breakfast.
it.
And I was out
um,
last night, so that's not helped.
Yeah, okay. Well, Mark, welcome.
Well,
Do you want to
thank
give a
you.
little summary of your career and yeah, because there may be some people out there who don't know what you've done and what you're doing. So
Yeah,
just a little summary helpful for us all.
sure. Yeah, I was a music teacher for a long time, head of music, and then an advanced skills teacher in music. A few colleagues may remember what that they were
Yeah.
back in the day, and that was a privileged role as well. And I taught initially in secondary, but as an ASC, I taught right through from early years through to sixth form. Worked in schools. I worked in county music services, local authority music services as well. County advisor for the arts, so I looked after art, music, drama, dance, and then went to HMI, where I was with HMI for 16 years. Most of that was as senior HMI in London, doing sort of general HMI work and management work, but also I had two stints as national lead for music with HMI, which is a real privilege. And so, I authored some reports for them, got to see music all over the country. And then I left HMI in 2022, in September 2022. I was actually His Majesty's Inspector for one day only. I left HMI on the first day of the new reign, which is quite poignant, really,
Yeah.
and quite a privilege to be HMI for Her Majesty for that long. And for the past 3 years, I've been doing my own thing. I founded my own consultancy business. And so I do a mixture really of whole school review work, school improvement work, but also some music work as well. Quite a lot of music work, to be honest, working with hubs and academy trusts and schools.
Fabulous. I mean, it's when you, I'm not critical now of new HMI. I'm not. I mean, we're all products of the opportunities we've had.
Of
But when you
course.
describe then your career towards the position of HMI, it
Mm.
was incredibly varied. It wasn't it wasn't rooted through perhaps one multi-academy trust, or it wasn't rooted in one school primarily, and in a way that I long to get back to a period where that breadth of experience is brought into the inspectorate.
And yes, I will say that, Frank, but I'll also say that, I'm not going to go back to the classroom now.
No.
If I did, the experience of being an HMI and seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of schools over now 20 years would certainly make me a better teacher.
Yes.
You learn as much from being an HMI as you give back.
Yeah.
You learn such great deal about people, about schools. You see things. I remember my first day as HMI, Roger Shipham,
Yeah.
who was the regional director then.
Was a really nice a really nice HMI.
Oh,
A lot of time for Roger.
he was superb. But he said to us, just remember, when you go into schools, you'll see things done differently to the way you did them, and it just may be better than the way you did them.
Yeah.
So, in other words, go in not expecting schools to do things the way you did them,
Mm.
but judge them on how effective they are. And I've always remembered that, don't go in expect them to be like you because they can't be like you,
No.
but just people what they are.
I think
We
also,
had this very similar upbringing when we worked for Ofsted as additional inspectors, and that was the same phrase virtually. It was um, don't, it's not your lesson. You need to watch it and see how much it'll be different from yours, but it might, like you say, it might be better.
yes.
And
Yes,
certainly, a lot of them were.
I think that
yeah,
I often think about what I gained most from those observations, and sometimes the very highly effective lessons, it was quite difficult to unpick why it was so effective, but actually for lessons that were going, were not going as well, it was easier to unpick some of the reasons why they were falling apart. And so in a way I gained quite a lot from the lessons that were not as effective as I did from the ones that were most effective.
You say
yes.
that about leadership, Frank. You learn
Yeah,
more
yeah.
from a poor leader than you do from a good leader.
Mm, mm,
I think also, there's danger, and we're not talking about music particularly now, but there's danger when you go into a classroom, you look at what the teacher is doing and you make notes about what the teacher is doing, and you forget about what the children are doing and the impacts. And one of my many mantras is I often go in and I put myself in the position of the least likely student in that class. What would they be thinking?
mm.
What would they be? How would they be receiving this? And how is it inspiring them, engaging them, making them work? So look at it through their eyes as well as looking at it through teacher performance,
Yeah,
because sometimes there is a performance, isn't there?
there is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think also there was something. Sorry, just reminiscing now. If you're watching and listening to this, then actually we apologise. We're slightly off script here, but
Frank's reminiscences are in sepia, by the way, for those who don't know.
but I remember Stan and I, when we were additional inspectors, we were mentored by Miriam Rosen, and Miriam admitted right from the outset she had virtually no primary experience whatsoever. So she was leaning on us to help her be a more effective inspector. But I think one of the things that she talked about was this sort of sense of, consistently solid teaching day after day after day, the building up of knowledge and skills and excitement and enjoyment, experiences day after day after day was, in her view, and I think I agree with it, more beneficial to students than the flashy one-off lesson which draws the attention, that always sticks with me. Solidly good lessons, as we used to describe it, really powerful experiences for children. If I can just make a personal point, and we'll be talking about carousels, I think later on. But our granddaughter is in year 9, and at her school they do their GCSE in she's in year 9. They do their GCSE Spanish in year 9 because they load up 3 years of Spanish teaching in the first 3 years. And she struggled at the beginning, but she has been fortunate to have a Spanish teacher that has just solidly encouraged her. She'll never be the greatest Spanish speaker, but she goes into an exam feeling as though she's got that sort of thing about her, a little bit of confidence that I probably can do this, And I think that that's not from the sparkling lessons. This is really just about really good relationships with the pupils, a real sort of steer towards, we can do this together, and also just helping those that need that little bit more support. And it's been transformational for her. So, I don't know her name, but whoever she is, thank you very much from our family's point of view.
Do you remember, Frank, when we used to have to give a little piece of paper at the end of an inspection
Oh,
when there'd been a teacher who was outstanding or
remember
whatever?
that, Mark? Were you there when you?
No,
Oh,
You
that
had to
was your time.
identify if they'd had so many, what would it be, excellent lessons.
Mm,
You had to identify. I mean, I can remember a primary school going to the head teacher at the end of the inspection and saying, "I've got this certificate, as it was, for teacher X." And he said, "That's brilliant." He said, "You're not here the rest of the year when I have to kick his backside every morning." He was just a showman that, with
Yeah,
Ofsted in, had put on a show for 3, 4 days, and it wasn't him at all, really.
no, no. Well,
Mm.
let's get on to what's caught our eye this week. This, for those of you who don't know, this is the only bit that we slightly prep in that we all share the issue that we're going to raise, so we don't all talk about the same thing. So we always go to Stan first, then to our guest, and then to me. So over to you, Stan. What's caught your eye this week?
Well, it's a mixture really of several things coming together at once. I've got to prepare some work for some schools on the introduction of Martin's Law, which won't happen until 2028.
Do you want
But
to just explain what Martin's Law is? Because
Martin's Law is about preparation and having proper procedures to counter any risk of a terrorist attack. And it's for the next 2 years, schools will have to put together some rules, some procedures, some practices that they probably haven't done or haven't done for a while. Have a communication system, have somebody nominated to be responsible for making sure all these things happen. And it will shake things up. And what got me thinking about it was I don't want us to get to a point where everybody's terrified. I remember after Dunblane, because we were inspecting when Dunblane happened, and suddenly all these massive fences and schools started to look more like prisons than schools. And I worry that what we'll do if we're not careful with this next move will be we'll reintroduce that thought of everything's terror related. But I do think schools need to just sharpen up on
mm,
on
mm,
where they are now from where they perhaps were after Dunblane. And that coincided with seeing a little news program about a, a lad, I'll call him, a youth who'd murdered his siblings and his mother and was arrested by police because he looked strange walking along the road with a shotgun and shotgun cartridges on his way to a school, to his old primary school, actually, with an
mm,
intent to make notoriety for another mass killing. And that was, made me think, and I looked a bit into that. The sort of organisations say you can't get details of these, but over the last 5 years, about between 8 and 10 potential attacks on schools, four of which they describe as goal line saves.
oh,
So
is
I
that
presume, I presume that's like that, two vigilant police officers
mm,
thinking
mm.
this doesn't look
Yeah,
right
yeah.
and doing exactly the right thing. And it made me think whether it's the current social climate that we are doing things and we're allowing things to happen which we wouldn't allow happen maybe even 2 years ago. And I'm talking about groups of men in particular putting themselves up as vigilantes to save our school and to protect our school. And I'm not convinced that the vigilantes are actually
Uh,
bigger risk than what risk there is. There
was it?
is a risk, there's no doubt.
Yeah, was it in the was it the Bell Hotel in Epping where oh no, it was the general unrest where there was sort of protests against um, migrants being housed in hotels. That of the people that the police arrested, around 40% of them had been had a previous conviction for domestic violence. So in effect, there is a sort of like an underlying sort of, we all know it's like going back to school. If there was, there used to be a chant. I'm sure you had it in your school: fight, 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 and there would then be a ring of people around it. The people who didn't want to get involved were watching it from afar. Those who thought, oh yeah, I'm up for this, they were on the ring, and wanted to get in. So in a way, society's a little bit like that, isn't it? Within society, if something crops up, the usual suspects will appear. Um, yeah. I mean, Mark, you do a
School
lot of this.
preparation, I mean, the one that I think schools don't do well is getting children in and into safe places. So, playground, emptying the playground and getting everybody into school in a safe place.
Mm,
I doubt there's many schools who practice that.
yeah,
Yet I do think there's a risk there of, I usually use the, wild dog on the playground, which is quite
yeah,
possibility.
yes, yes,
But we don't have any procedure for getting children away from that.
yeah,
Yeah, if the school's on fire, which is very rare, we practice that regularly.
yes,
So
yes,
I don't want to say we're increasing because there's no evidence that the risk to schools is increasing. But I do think every now and again we need to just step up our vigilance.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I mean, Mark, you've visited Manchester this week, haven't you?
Yes, and it's Manchester that's caught my eye this week, Frank, and I knew you'll both be pleased about that. Um, I mean, being an HI now in the work I do, one of the biggest privileges is seeing the country, the breadth and depth of the country. And I've been to Manchester this week, and what a fantastic, vibrant city it's become. I can remember 20 years ago going to Manchester, and it's changed beyond all recognition. And the transport is wonderful. I'm a great fan. As a grandson of a London bus driver, I've got a bit of a nerdy obsession for public transport, but the trams and the buses, what a great job you've done with those. And the people, what lovely people I've met this week, on the buses, on the trams, in the shops, in the hotel I stayed at. And it's been a lovely week. Just meeting the people.
Yes.
I had to do some work as well, but the lovely people I met made a week to remember. Actually,
Wow.
um,
And I do as a southerner as well, Mark. I mean, I was thinking about the history of the word love. Yeah, everybody is called love. When you meet, the word love is used for males and for females. It's used by everybody, but it's a very endearing and it softens the relationship. I think it's sort of it's like a handshake without a handshake. It's really nice. I think because what I'll get onto my one, what's caught my eye, which actually relates a little bit to your work in terms of music, but so that we don't lose it, where are we with music in our schools? Where are we with music in the national consciousness? Where are we?
well, it's a bit of a contradiction because everyone loves music, don't they?
Mm,
You show me a teenager who doesn't like music, who doesn't listen to music. They all love music. And yet, do they love music in school? Is music a favorite subject? For some, it's the
mm,
reason they go to school. For me, it was one of the reasons I went to school. I'd like to think that, I was teaching for some of my pupils, it was their subject in school. But now, some children like music, not despite what goes on in school, but actually, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
We've lost the way somehow, I think. For some children, those who learn instruments, those who have individual lessons, those who go to youth orchestras and choirs after school and in the holidays, those who play in their bedrooms with their friends and bands and everything, they do it all the time. But school music, I think curriculum school music needs some attention, still
Mm,
needs some attention.
yeah.
Perhaps we'll explain the reasons why in the
Yeah.
next few minutes.
Yeah, we might. I mean, I think for me, as somebody who didn't really take playing, well, I'm thinking about my own experiences. I started playing guitar. We had choirs in our primary school and in the secondary
Mm,
school. We were very lucky in our secondary school to have a teacher called Ray Noon, who
mm,
was a um, amazing jazz pianist. And I've said here before, but I heard Sergeant Pepper's in the music room when he brought that vinyl in and said to a group of what were then, fourth years or whatever, come and listen to this. And that experience alone was enough, for me to be, to recall it. How many years later? These are special experiences, and I think when you start playing, you start to understand music and appreciate it a little bit more. I certainly do. Is playing guitar. I could listen to it listen to music at a sort of superficial level, but when you start trying to play that music and you're then starting to listen to what all the different instruments are playing, it's a completely different experience.
I think it's really important to say as well that there are some great music teachers in our schools, like your Mr. Noon and my Mr. Dove and Mr. Leveridge, my two music teachers in my secondary school. And the reasons for music's problems at the moment in primary and secondary actually aren't entirely to do with music educators. They're to do with consequences and subsequences of policy. I don't think the policy that's come out of government in the past 25 years has in itself been bad, because there's been lots of advocacy for music. There's been lots of money put into music education. We've had 2 national plans for music education. We've not had national plan for geography education or for history education. They've set up the hubs. There've been various reports, ministers, Michael Gove, Nick Gibb, even the Prime Minister, in a recent interview on Radio 3, advocate music education. They're great advocates, but something has gone wrong.
Yes.
Something is going wrong. And somehow all the intention and all the good intention hasn't happened. And it's quite complex. It's quite complex. The reason why perhaps we can
Yeah, well,
explore
I
that.
can get on to what's caught my eye this week. I was reading, we do a little bit of research on our guests, and I was struck by talk or a speech you gave, I think it was in 2021. And it was quite a lengthy speech, but reading the transcript, I was really struck by the focus you were giving to the use of carousels, particularly in secondary schools, but it's also in primaries, isn't it? So for those who don't know, a carousel approach is where actually you might have a particular subject, but you don't have it on a regular basis. It comes in perhaps every half term or every term, or even worse, every year. But whatever it is, that's sort of, it's not an expectation. Whereas in maths and English and some other subjects, you'll have a number of those lessons each week. So I know you were quite critical of the carousel in your speech. I mean,
Yes.
how have we got to this position? It leads into, I think, some of the issues you were talking just before.
Yes. Well, I mean, in the past month, the big issue in music education, where everyone's been celebrating, is the proposal to remove the EBAC from the curriculum review, Becky Francis' curriculum review. And it's something which the music education community have been pushing for a long time. Make no mistake, it's good for music for the EBAC to be reviewed and for it to be changed, because numbers taking music GCSE have dropped significantly over the past 25 years, past 15 years. And there's no doubt that having a restricted option system in Key Stage 4 has put pressure on music. But it's been more than that, because in some schools, and I know this from my own observations, my own visits to school, because the pressure on schools to have more children doing languages and have all children doing geography or history. Some schools, some head teachers, some academy trusts have taken that, have interpreted that, and I emphasize this has not been government policy. I'm not going to lay the blame at government here. Have interpreted that as meaning they have to, if you like, pump prime the Key Stage 3 curriculum. So in order to get high numbers doing languages and to get high numbers doing geography and history in Key Stage 4, they have to pump prime the Key Stage 3 curriculum. And therefore, the open bucket subjects like music and dance and drama, and instantly dance and drama are not national curriculum subjects, of course. Dance is part of PE and drama is part of English. So, dance and drama never have been equal in Key Stage 3 to music. But some schools have decided to reduce time for music in Key Stage 3 by putting those subjects onto a carousel. And of course, that has a knock-on effect, and it's a double worry, because if children aren't doing music so much in Key Stage 3, they're not going to have the confidence or the knowledge or the skills needed for Key Stage 4. So the carousel in a lot of schools has been an unintended consequence of the EBAC. And hopefully now that the EBAC will be no more, and that there will be more open choice for pupils. And I suspect, big numbers will carry on taking geography and history and languages, and that's not an issue for me. And, they're all good subjects, but maybe the carousels may just diminish a little bit in Key Stage 3, because it has had knock-on effects. But it is a consequence of the EBAC, but unintended consequence, I think. It's unfortunate.
I'll let Stan come in, because
well, I'm not convinced it's unintentional, because I think Michael Gove chose what was going to go in the EBAC based on his own experience of what was important in schools, and I don't think he rated music as being an important aspect of schools. And I think that was a deliberate, and the consequence of that was, of course, for schools who were trying to score highly with their later on the Progress 8 and things like that, music wasn't a subject that gave them that. And the reason I say that is, at the time, my son was training as a music teacher, and he had an allowance of like £9,000, I think, to encourage more people to train as music teachers. At the point when he was trained and came out, schools had stopped appointing music teachers. Secondary schools were reducing the music department. So instead of having
that's the point I was going to make. The consequences of the EBAC are that if you use the carousel, is it because actually I can't get a decent music teacher for love nor money because there aren't enough of them around? Or is it, it's probably that, and also the potential impact on the progress measures. But isn't there an issue now, like in physics? There's a lot of debate about, there's a move towards, studying physics at to the exam level. That actually there won't be enough physics teachers. Now, there's never been enough physics teachers for years, but isn't music going to also have this sort of lag now, where perhaps some schools want to do it, but actually the numbers of music teachers out there doesn't appear to be good enough for the market, or enough for the market?
There is an issue in recruitment for music teachers, absolutely no doubt about that at all. But it's a complex situation, and you can't just put it down to one thing. And the EBAC has had consequences for uptake at GCSE. And it has a consequence, has been the carousel at Key Stage 3. And the consequence of all that is that fewer pupils taking GCSE, therefore fewer pupils taking A-level, therefore fewer pupils are qualifying to become music teachers. However, there are other factors as well, because quality is not the same as quantity.
No.
And in the National Plan for Music Education, which was published 2 or 3 years ago now, they talked about this phrase, a high quality music education. And they said some of the characteristics were 1 hour of music every week. Now, the amount of time you spend doing a subject doesn't necessarily equate to a quality education.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even in schools where there is an hour a week, every week for music, there are some issues in teaching and learning of music that are prohibiting better progress and prohibiting pupils taking music at GCSE. One of the things that I really like about the new Ofsted framework, I'm not here to talk about Ofsted, and I'm not going to be drawn into the new framework very much. But one of the things I really like in the teaching and curriculum section is where they talk about subject-specific disciplinary teaching and learning. That has been a problem for, I guess, 5 or 6 years now in music, with generic teaching strategies which work quite well in history and quite well in English. And I'm thinking these are my bête noirs. Turn and talk and do now activities, which are being imposed by senior leaders on music teachers. And they're not fit for purpose in our subject. So, if you said to a music teacher, you must start a lesson with a silent activity. Now, think this through. Music, a silent activity. Unless you're going to play John Cage to them, 4 minutes, 33 seconds, which is a famous silent piano piece. It's quite difficult to have a silent starter activity in music. And turn and talk. All these strategies are based on verbal knowledge and verbal declarative knowledge. And it's all about words. So you end up talking about music rather than doing music. And I think, to be honest with you, it's stifled some music teachers into, in the hour, you can go in and see maybe at best half an hour or 20 minutes of actual music. And the rest is taken, turn to your partner and have a conversation about how you feel about this piece of music. Well, actually, that's just make music. And I think it's another factor which is problematic for music education. And I think all this knowledge-based curriculum stuff that's gone on in the past few years has been so heavily based on verbal declarative knowledge, which works great in history. But in music, that's not how we work. And I'll give you an example of a really brave teacher that I saw, not in music, actually in food technology, where they're doing our activity was come in, take your jackets and jumpers off, roll up your sleeves, wash your hands, put on your aprons, and come and stand around the bench where I'm going to demonstrate. That was a do now activity. It wasn't inside. It was inside, but I wasn't writing questions about what's the agent that makes bread rise or whatever. It's actually procedural. Disciplinary. It was retrieval because they had to remember how to prepare for cooking. But I think we need to really think and challenge in our subjects what these bandwagons, and they are bandwagons, aren't they? I call them guru inspired bandwagons. What they mean for our subjects is be brave to actually make it working on a subject, because in music, it's killing music
Yeah.
education in the classroom. It's killing it.
I can remember my son when he was on teaching practice in an old style grammar school, and he was really enjoying it. He said that
Mm,
the students were really enjoying it. And
mm,
then he had a complaint from some of the staff that said the children were getting too excited and they were having to spend time calming them down before they could do the next lesson. And Paul was kind of saying to me, aren't kids supposed to be excited? Isn't that the point of it?
It's like
But
it's
yeah,
too noisy in that music
yeah,
room. It's far too noisy. How can I get on with my work here next door? Yeah,
yeah.
well, you see, Paul, his music experience was nothing through secondary school. He did clarinet at primary school, peripatetic support, did nothing at all through secondary school, went to sixth form, was interested in technology
Mm,
and took music technology. And suddenly, because he'd got a slight background in music, he could play the piano at that point. That really switched him on, and he ended up going to university to do, I think it was band musicianship he did in
yeah.
university, but then went on to teach training to teach music. So it's not the end of the world if you don't quite get it during your
no,
secondary school,
no.
as long as you have a connection. And I think Paul, we'd
Yeah.
insisted, sounds awful this, we'd insisted on his piano. And what
Mm,
we'd done for that, which worked quite well, was we said you can pack it in anytime you want, but you can only pack it in after you've got a certificate. So the day after you've got your grade 6 or grade 7, you can stop. Well, of course, that's the last time that they want to stop because they. So then it was a commitment to the next grade, etc. Uh,
Well, I would say, just to bring it to a close, that the theme music that will play at the beginning and the end of this, Paul composed that, and
all
also
right.
the we have a slightly longer one chat called Spotlight. Actually, Mark, I'm interested because I feel as though just the tip of the iceberg, just to get you back to talk about purely music. So I will set that up. But Rick Dawson wrote the theme music to that, and Rick was in that classroom with Ray Noon all those years back, and has lived a life as a musician ever since. So yeah, thank you, Mark, for
Pleasure.
well, it's been a yeah, it's been a lovely chat. I really enjoyed the references to. Well, I've got a deeper understanding of music education. I think I've also got it's reminded me of the appreciation I have for the city that adopted me. So thank you for that as well.
I've not seen the certificate yet, Frank. I'm not.
Uh, okay, well, yeah, we're on next week as well. Actually, just need to rearrange the timing of it, but I think we're heading out to Bogota again, Stan. So we had a colleague, a young man who set up a football charity out in South America, and we're going to revisit him. And then also at the end of the week, we have a chat with Lois McClure, and a young woman who came through an apprentice route and is now a senior manager. So we're going to be sort of heading to Bogota and back to Manchester, I think, in the next week.
Well, I have to say on the football theme, Frank, I did drive past the Etihad and also Old Trafford. I held my breath on both occasions as a West Ham fan, but I think the league says about the best at the moment. But no, it's always thrilling when you go to a new place, see the grounds. For me, it's part of the culture.
I
Uh,
agree. I agree entirely.
yeah.
In fact, sorry.
Somebody who went to Old Trafford on a very regular basis when I was in my youth. I used to love games against West Ham. They were always fantastic,
Yeah, and I,
open football games. It's stupid to say it like that, but it was one of the fixtures that I used to really look
yeah,
forward
yeah,
to going to
yeah.
see.
I also just in terms of we've got to finish because we've been going on for far too long. But talking about places to visit, last week we went into Stockport and we drove past Strawberry Studios, and where the 10cc produced a lot of their albums, but also people like Neil Sedaka, Paul McCartney have recorded in these studios, Joy Division. Um, but the thing is that some of my wife's relatives came over from Australia. The one place they wanted to visit was Strawberry Studios. And what is really sad, you can't get into Strawberry Studios. It's got a sign outside across the building, but really, I would love to see what that studio looked like. It's probably just as big as my study. You know what I mean? I'm not overemphasizing it. It's not massive, but this little place in Stockport produced so much amazing music, and we haven't really used that to draw people in to sort of say, yeah, this is part of our musical heritage, really.
Well, Manchester, music, the 90s,
Yeah.
I need to say no more, really.
We'll bring you back for the session that talks about music in the 90s in Manchester, Mark.
You do the whole thing, Joy Division, Inspiral Carpets, into Oasis, do all that.
Can I say it? If we did that, we'd probably.
There's a set of books up there that are all about that, because when Paul did his dissertation, it was about the influence of music in Manchester on the country in terms of the political manoeuvres.
Right. Well, we'll definitely have you back, Mark. It's been a
Thank
great
you.
chat. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, everybody, that it's slightly longer than we normally have, but that was very much around the topic and the interest that I think we gained from your insight, Mark. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
So
Thanks, everyone.
until next time, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you soon in the next week or so. So until the next Frankenstein chat. Cheerio, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.